You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
We tried to spice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood art Ed me?
Yeah. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today I'm excited. I'm bringing another artist interview. I have Ephraim Urevbu, a contemporary artist originally from Nigeria who is now based out of Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you so much for coming to join us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to have talked with you.
Okay, so I always like to start off with a little bit of an artist's background. I feel like it gives us the context to understand the work. Can you tell us about yourself? Where did you grow up? How did you get into art? All of that sort of stuff.
Originally, like you said, I'm from Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria, went to school in Nigeria, and like every Nigerian parent, they want their kids to become three professions, either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer.
I feel like that's not just Nigerian parents.
And I had the audacity to say that I was going to change course. First I went to a very elite school, three of which were the model for grooming the next generation of leaders in the country. And they were strategically located in the country whereby we have the North move down south, the South move up north, and east west. The reason behind that is for us to really get integrated in such a way where we understand the languages and the culture, because believe it or not, Nigeria have over 270 different dialects in one country. Wow. And as you travel from one area to another, languages changes some, even the culture changes a little bit, you know. So to understand the dynamic of what was created as a country, we needed to break away from the tribes and the languages and be a united country. And so that was why these schools were created, and they were created in partnership with the British and the United States government. And because of the uniqueness of the schools, every student that went there was quote unquote special. And you were supposed to learn everything you can, become leaders of the country. So with that said, the standard was raised. Every person that left that college or that school became either engineers, doctors, and lawyers. Very few artists. Art was not one thing that was looked upon as a career, you know. And I could remember my parents really, really struggling to understand why I decided to choose that path. I haven't been given such a privileged education. Yeah. And because of the pressure to conform, I decided to leave the country. And that is how I left Nigeria for the States.
It's interesting. I feel like, you know, having done research on so many artists, it feels like that's a somewhat common story about an artist who, you know, sort of has a lot of opportunities and parents pushing them towards law, economics, all that sort of stuff. And then there's just something in them that they feel a drive to become an artist. You know, they walk away. So many artists in history, so many brilliant people have been a little bit of a disappointment to their parents and their career choices.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what was it that drew you to the arts, that made you say, you know what, I recognize I have these opportunities, but the one that I really want to pursue is art? And how were you even exposed to it if there was so much driving you towards engineering or law or medicine?
Interestingly, the school I went to was such an elite high school that my instructors, my English teacher was from England, my French teacher was from France, my biology teacher was from, I think, Germany, physics from the United States. And I had an art teacher, so we had actually an art studio. It was well furnished. We had everything there. And I noticed very early on that I was happiest the days I have art classes. I was eager to go to class the days I have art. And I excelled in it. And our works were placed in competitions globally, even at that young age. And I was winning awards from Europe while still in Nigeria with my art. And so there was that connection. And also I became the president of the press club because I cartoon very well. I tell stories with my cartoons and people responded accordingly. And so I saw the connection between my soul and my gift. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and although subconsciously I knew I can't really pursue this career because I know it would be a disappointment to my parents. But deep inside, I felt there was something that I had that made me so happy. And there was no way I was going to disconnect from that.
Yeah.
So I recognized very early on the gift, the talent. And that I'm very grateful for, because if I didn't recognize that earlier on, and I did that later on after I had pursued my career in medicine and all of that, I would have been one of the worst doctors the world would have seen, So because I discovered that very early on, I had the courage to fight for it and to say, I'm going to leave the country. And I left the country with nothing because nobody wanted to support me going to do art. So I took jobs right after leaving high school. I was working 3 jobs, sometimes 4, to get enough money and enough fund to apply for admission to art schools in the States.
Wow.
And the reason I came to the States instead of going to Europe was I felt Europe was too close. The flight from Lagos to London is a 6-hour flight. The flight from Lagos to Memphis or Atlanta is a 14-hour flight. So I wanted to keep a long distance between me and my folks because I knew that it would be difficult for them to come visit, However, I was able to put together enough funds to get my airline ticket, get a visa, get admission, pay 1-year tuition to the art college here at Memphis College of Art. And then I took off, and coming down to America was the first step. Getting here was a culture shock. And everything I knew about the States was not what I was presented with, and so the struggle to adapt, to, fit in became one of the biggest struggles that I have to overcome. But all of that actually became what I call some of the topics I use that I my work today, the stories, the struggles, the disappointments, the racism, the pain, all of that are now subject matters for my work, which for that I'm very, very grateful for.
Wow. So as you were explaining that, I was struck by 2 things. One, the first thought I had was just like, how scary it must have been to leave behind the home that you knew. And you said you chose to travel to the US because it's farther than Europe. And for me, it's like I would have wanted the comfort of knowing that my family is closer. And so I was struck by that idea that you chose to go farther away. And I'm curious, like my first thought is maybe you did that because it's easier to commit fully if you're farther away, or what was the rationale behind that?
That too, there was no turning back.
Yeah.
So that too was maybe part of the reason, but the major reason for me was I needed to get, because the pain, the struggle because it was hard to convince my parents that I really enjoy this, even with all the awards I was having. They saw me and I knew they meant well.
Yeah.
Their goal was to make sure that I'm secured. So I understood that.
Yeah. You worry about your kids.
Yes. And the pressure also came from my classmates who are now in med school. Actually, I went to med school for one semester. The first sight of blood was my last day in med school, okay? So the pressure from my classmates I went to school with who are now in med schools or studying engineering, and each time we met in a social setting, they will laugh at me and go, "Oh, he's the drawer. He draws. He went to this beautiful school just to go learn how to draw." You know what I'm saying? So they kind of made you feel like, you're not worth anything. And so my thing was just to get away from everyone, and wanted to get away as far. And funny enough, when I came to the States, right here in Memphis, I met a lot of Nigerians in med school.
Really?
Yeah, and we socialize, okay? The same story. So what med school are you attending, or what course are you taking? Immediately they expected me to be either one of those three professions. And we tell, "Oh, I'm in an art school." "You mean you came all the way from Nigeria to go to art school here?" So that pressure, even then, I had to get away from that clique. I isolated myself in order to pursue the dream, So it was hard. It was really, really hard.
Now, another thing that struck me, and you even started to get it you said you were surprised to find you met so many Nigerian people in med school in Memphis, but you had said that a lot of your work is sort of inspired by or interpreting or based off of the sort of disconnect or the difference between your expectation of the US and the reality of the US. And can you sort of tease out a little bit there, like growing up outside the US, what was the image and the expectation you had, and how did the reality differ?
See, I would say all over the world, the US has really marketed itself as this place where people can come and be whatever they want to be in life and be successful, which to some extent is very true. Okay. But the underlying stories that made the US what it is, the good, the bad, the ugly, the good is emphasized.
Yeah.
The bad is never shown. So I came with, it's a land that was flowing with milk and honey, and that you can do whatever you want and really excel. Nobody will judge you. If you want to be an artist, you want to be whatever you want to be in life, which is true, which gave me the opportunity to excel. Yeah. But coming from Africa and coming down here, I never had someone judge me by the color of my skin. We have in Nigeria what we call nepotism or tribalism, okay? But never racism. So it was a shock for when I was confronted for the very first time with that, and I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to deal with it, okay? And then I had a difficult time. I mean, I struggled with it for many, many years that I had to leave one school and go to another school to see if I can run away from it. So I was at the art college here, and it was a small private um, art school. And I felt maybe because of the size is too small, predominantly white, maybe I should go to a bigger school. And I transferred to the University of Memphis, where I did my master's degree, and also got confronted with that. So for a long time, I struggled with that. And then as I began to understand the dynamics of what it is, for example, now fast forward, and we will talk about that later with this project I'm working on. I've gone back home and I've asked a lot of Nigerians, do you know what really happened to your ancestors when they arrived at the shores of the United States? 99.9% of them don't. I didn't know anything about, I didn't know anything about the struggles of Blacks in this country. What we were told coming here was that, you're going to meet Black people, but, they have their own way of doing things and all of that. So there was this disconnect between me and African Americans when I got here. Okay. Until I began to really study and research about the civil rights movement. Right now, my gallery is right in front of the Civil Rights Museum where Martin Luther King was shot and killed. And I say to everybody today with the project I'm working on that it is not by chance that I'm located here, because what this space has done for me and what the legacy of what he did for this country and the struggle that he went through and many others before and after him are going through has really cemented my belief in humanity and the need for me to use what God has given me, my talent, to begin to address some of these issues in a way whereby people can connect. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's been the struggle. But I look back and I say to myself that everything has a purpose. There was a reason why I left the country. There was a reason why I came to Memphis instead of going to another city. This is where the struggle really had bloodshed in a way that it touched the whole world. You know what I'm saying? And for me to have my location right in front of where that took place really says a lot about what I'm doing today.
Yeah, and just to sort of tease that out and make it a little bit more explicit, you have said the project you're working on today, I'm assuming you're referring to the Naked Truth project that that I'm aware of, that you're focusing on, sort of transparency and bringing these issues to light and having an open and honest dialogue about that. And for me, the idea that you're engaged in that work right across from where Martin Luther King was, I mean, just the history and the art coming together, it feels like something, if I saw it in a movie, I would be like, no, that can't be. It's too perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Before I do the cut to ads, I want to tell you about another great podcast for history lovers. It's called Calm History. If you want to learn about fascinating moments in history in the most relaxing way possible, try Calm History. Each episode is narrated in a calm voice to help you relax or even fall asleep. You'll learn about famous explorers, leaders, inventions, civilizations, and ancient wonders. Just search for Calm History on your favorite podcast player or tap the link in the show notes. Now, today, like I said, your current work, you're doing the Naked Truth Project, and when I have the privilege of talking to an artist, I always want to get some insights into their process. You've alluded to the inspiration behind this, but I think it can be helpful to get some more specificity. So, if I could, I'm going to ask you a two-part question here. One, could you give just sort of your overview and framing of the Naked Truth art project and, this body of work that you're doing? And then just walk us through your process in creating for a specific piece. I think we have the E Pluribus Unum piece is going to be the cover art for this episode. Can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, the project started about 9 years ago. Prior to now, I have done works. I've done works that address specific issues. For example, I did a whole series of work on homelessness. Because coming here, America was sold to us as a very rich country, and with what I'm saying. So coming down, here, I didn't expect to see homeless people. And then I saw homeless people and I go, wow. So I did a whole series working with the homeless nonprofit here in Memphis, a whole series to raise funds for that. I've done works with the veterans, so I do, prior to now, I've done projects, with specific organizations and groups. But 2015, something happened that really shifted everything for me. Michael Brown was shot and killed in St. Louis. If you remember that incident, but it wasn't the incident. It was the fact that his body was left on the street for hours, and that really touched me. And I went to the studio, and prior to now, let me go back. 2004, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I had to deal with a lot of health issues between 2004 through even now. But when that incident happened, I started really reassessing why and what my role in it is and what can I do about it. Because there were this emotional upheaval. I was angry, I was sad. And the one thing that kept coming to mind is I hear this voice. You have your art, you have your talent. Why not use it? So I went to this studio and started asking those very tough questions. Why is that so much conflict? Why do people hate so much? What is the underlying stories behind all of this? And how can I help to start that conversation about these stories that I've dug up? So using the arts in a way that I'd used it before in creating a whole district for the city of Memphis, I created a Memphis Art District, which when I first arrived, there was nothing happening, did a proposal for the city. And in 4 years, we were able to create a district that became very vibrant. And today it is the hottest real estate in the city of Memphis. Okay. So I had that background and I saw how effective the arts was in creating that. And I thought we can still do the same thing using the arts to connect people. Because at the end of the day, I felt we have so much in common than that which divides us. And the emphasis has been on the division part. So I wanted to focus on what connects us as human beings. And so I went to the studio and I started asking the question, why is it that we don't talk to each other? And that was where the title of the project came into focus. Truth is not being told. The word truth came into the picture. Truth is not being told. And then the word naked. The reason we're not telling truth, because we don't want to really confront truth. We are ashamed of truth. So the idea when you feel naked, there's this sense of being ashamed. You want to cover up, and
it's
so
vulnerable.
It's vulnerable, exactly. And so connecting both words, naked truth. That was a topic that just came into focus. And I was so excited when I got into the studio and I started working. In between 2015 and today, we've created over 150 pieces of artwork, more than I have done all my life in such a short period of time. I was possessed, telling this and doing this research. It was painful. It was exhilarating. It was, all form of human emotion came into focus when I was doing this. And so that's how the Naked Truth Art Project started. And as I began to dig into these stories, and as things began to happen, I was having more subject matters to work with. There's no day I turn on the television that I don't get a story to tell with the next piece. Yeah. So that was the beginning of the Naked Truth Art Project.
And so now, just if we could shift gears a little bit to drill down into a specific work. Like I said, the cover art for this episode is a painting of yours, E Pluribus Unum, which is the Latin phrase out of many one. And can you tell us just about your steps in creating? Like, I know some artists will start off with, there's an idea I want to communicate. How do I show that? Some artists will start off with sort of like a vision in their head, and then they think about associations with that. Some are a little bit more spontaneous. Some are making lots of sketches and thumbnails and then working. Like, walk us through how did you create that piece? So what was your first step?
This whole thing, I really thought through this whole process, how I was going to tell this story in a way whereby people can actually connect. Okay. So the first phase was we're not talking to each other. And every time you hear people say, you go back to your country, you do this, you're not from here. Yeah. So that division was so rampant, is them versus us, and all of that. Then I recognized that I have to start by telling people or showing people how we got here. How we got here is people migrating from various parts of the globe for whatever reason to come to a place where they can be themselves, just like I did. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we are all immigrants. And I wanted to make that the signature piece of this whole project, reminding people that we all are immigrants. And so that is a connection right there. We have a common cause. And that was the first signature piece. So, but I wanted to present it in such a way whereby people can relate. So I took an umbrella. When it rains or when it's hot, the umbrella is a symbol of shelter. People had to cover themselves. So I saw the umbrella, but the umbrella was formed with the American flag. It's in the color of the American flag. And underneath that umbrella, you see these figures of so many people taking shelter underneath there. Okay. So that became the signature piece of the oath. I wanted to start with that. So I asked the question, how did we get here? The next thing I asked, so what happened? So what happened was 400 years of slavery and the after effect of all of that. And I dived into all that stories, sometimes individual stories that are heart-wrenching to even look at, because I wanted to make people feel something. At the end of the day, there's no amount of legislation that we can pass. There's no amount of money we can throw into the problem that can solve it. Our issue, frankly, is a heart condition. And until we begin to go back to our humanity or prick our conscience back to life, we will continue to have the problem. So I wanted to approach this project from that space, tell a story in a systematic way, how we got here, what happened, and then what do we do about it. Even the book, we published a book with the same title, The Naked Truth Art Project, was designed exactly that same way. And the series of paintings that were done in this same group, this same three format, how we got here, starting with E Pluribus Unum. Then a national symbol was formed, which was the flag. And then, of course, what happened, 400 years of slavery. And then, of course, a series of work, which I call Let's Move, a call to action.
Yeah. And I think there's something that I find really interesting about your approach, and like why I was happy to talk to you and eager to have you on the show is because while there are a lot of artists who grapple with these issues, I think one thing is you don't stop at that raising questions. You talk about, a call to action and ways to move forward. And I think that is always helpful and constructive in the dialogue. But looking at this specific painting, I thought that the umbrella was a really clever metaphor because of not just the fact that, we talk about it, it's all under one umbrella. It's, all of that. But I think when we think about the umbrella as a temporary shelter, when there's a hazard, the rain, people come together under the umbrella. It's not just a protection for one. It's you kind of hold it out so that someone next to you can get under there too. And if your central message is people need to come together to weather the storm, to really torture a metaphor here, I feel like that works really nicely. And the other thing I find interesting is just like the colors are so bold and vibrant that like it's immediately eye-catching to me. And then I think about the subject matter and it's like it is heart-wrenching. I mean, it is I am familiar with the history of the U.S. and I've experienced it differently than a lot of other people, but it's painful to me to see and hear these stories and know that they play out time and time again. You referenced the St. Louis with Michael Brown, but there are, let's face it, that's not a one-off. But I think there's something about like the boldness of your color palette that draws you in as first fun, and then you have this realization of the implications and everything behind it. But then it also comes full circle and uplifts in a way, because it's like there is this potential, there is this vibrancy, there is this energy. We just need to stop getting in our own way. At least that's the way that I look at and interpret.
I smile because your interpretation of that piece just opened my eye to something else. And that is, you said that the umbrella, somebody is in the rain or somebody is under the weather, you can extend the umbrella to that person. So the human factor comes into play where we are our brother's keepers. You understand? And that way I hear you interpret the piece and I smile because it really opens that piece even more to me now. See, the beauty about art is this, that the artist had one thing in my mind as I was creating this. And I created based on that. And then I put it out there for interpretation. And boy, you get I mean, just what you just said now, I will go back and take a look at that piece again and really get to appreciate it even more because you have added some other element of it to the story. And that's the beauty of what how the arts can really impact people, you know? So yeah that's fun.
Well, thank you. I gotta say, it is tremendously validating to have the artist feel like I'm hitting on something correct or true or whatever in the interpretation. Because if I'm being 100% honest, I don't always feel like I intuitively get art. I went to art school. I love art, but I always say I'm not a particularly talented artist. I'm a systems guy. Like you, I was actually on the track to go to med school before I left to I was like national merit scholar and going to the honors program, and then I went to art school instead. But I look at this and, like I said, that's what I see. And as an art teacher, I'm often telling students, the artist has one idea, but part of the beauty of art is there's this dialogue that's happening between the artist and the audience, and we bring our own associations, and sometimes pieces take on a new life and new interpretations and new connections. But this is one that I like I said, I'm a big fan of because I see that umbrella as not just any shelter. Now, just to sort of shift gears a little bit, because again, when I have the privilege of talking to an artist, I do like to wrap things up by getting a little bit, try to glean a little bit of your wisdom, or what you've learned over the years, or what you would share with aspiring artists. What would you want the next generation to know about?
I just want to add a little thing to this project, in the sense that creating the collection is one thing. Connecting it with the universe is another challenge we had. Okay, because not too many people go to galleries or museums. And so how do people get to connect with what we're doing here? We decided to take the arts to the streets. So what we did, interestingly, is we created these art tiles that were baked in Europe, in Spain specifically, and they guaranteed me they will last for over 100 years from weather and traffic. And we created these art tiles with QR code embedded in them. And we laid them on the sidewalks leading to the National Civil Rights Museum. And this part of the city is a heavy tourist area. And people come and people walk and they see those tiles, and first they look around what's going on, and their curious mind immediately get their phone out and they scan. Once they scan those tiles, all the stories about the Naked Truth Project is right on their phone. Okay? And it's been so beautiful because people have been getting back in touch with me about how some of these stories never knew they existed, because I told the story. One of the pieces I did was about the Memphis Massacre of 1866. And I did this piece, and I also created a tile from it. And I had it out there. A lot of Memphians who were born here, who grew up here, did not even know anything about that story. And so until we did that, and people became really curious about that, I mean, you could feel the energy. People want to know, but people want to know on their own terms. It's not in your face. I'm not forcing you to read it. Your curious mind is having the better of you, which was the best way to get the story out. So that was what we did. I'm also trying to work out a clothing line on the same concept for high school or for school kids, where they can wear their clothes, T-shirts with these stories embedded in them, and they can scan them in class and read their stories. I'm trying to get the message out that way. But to your question, how do I get the next generation of artists to use their art in such a way that they can really feel fulfilled from the gift that they've been given? Well, I'm creating an art incubator in Memphis. So I bought a 7,000 square feet building and about an acre of land next to it. And we're building this structure to house the next generation of artists. And because I'm from Nigeria, I have connected this story to Africa. So a couple of months ago, I was in Nigeria to do a book tour and a book review on the radio, national radio there, for 15 episodes. And you cannot believe the amount of interest in the stories, because the question I started with was, do you all ever know what happened to your ancestors when they left the shores of Lagos? And it was an eye-opener. And then I went to Rwanda. Rwanda had the genocide museum, a very touchy story. I mean, going through that experience alone opened my eyes to the bigger vision here. So I started here, but this concept is global as far as because I'm connecting the dots now, with all these countries. So one of the things I want to do is to bring creative artists from these zones who are in this space, using their work to connect with people in such a way where they come to my incubator, and is a 3-year residency program I'm creating, all expense paid through the foundation we started. And
that's so cool.
And then together we can work and discuss these issues on a global scale. Okay. And come up with products or works that really connects and touch and motivates and inspire people to use, because I believe, since I started this, I truly believe that we all as human beings have special talents. You have your own talent. It's uniquely yours. How do you use that for a purpose? Okay. So the goal here is to give artists a chance to connect their gift to their passion.
That is awesome. And for those listeners whose curiosity has been piqued, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes, but you can find more at Naked Truth Art Gallery and Naked Truth Art Project on Instagram and Facebook, respectively. And I would encourage people to continue exploring and learning more about the truth and history and what our society is like and where it came from, and think more about where we can go for a better tomorrow. But I do want to say once again, a huge thank you, Ephraim Urevbu. Did I get that right?
Very good. Very good.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your art and sharing your insights with me today.
Thank you very much. I really, really, really appreciate the time you spent with me. I just want to get the message out. That's all. And you asking me to be on your show to me is a privilege, and I appreciate that.
Honestly, it was a privilege to have you. I one of the things I love about this show and doing this, and why I keep doing it, is because I get to learn from people who are much smarter than I. And I always enjoy that.
Thank you.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.